Quinn Ewers has returned to the field this weekend against TCU. Men's basketball continues the season undefeated, and an early look into predicting the women's basketball postseason. All of this and more coming up on College Press Box. Good evening and welcome to College Press Box. I'm your host, Chloe Porras. We have a great show for you this evening. But first, a quick reminder before we get started here that we are sponsored by Cap Metro, Austin's very own regional public transportation provider, connecting you to work, school, play, and more. Find your ride at capmetro.org. Now, Texas football heads into Week 12 of the season at 9-1 after a nail-biter in Fort Worth. Quinn has returned from his injury, and we've lost some other players along the way. So let's recap how the Longhorns performed this past weekend and view some highlights from the game. TCU kicked off to start the game in Fort Worth this past weekend, and with 10 minutes left in the first, Texas is on their fourth down with 1 yard to go, and Savion Red is stopped short by TCU's defense. On the next drive, TCU is looking to convert their third down, and Vernon Broughton brings down the house with his huge tackle. Jonathan Brooks continues to be an impressive player this season with a 73-yard reception in the first. Brooks showcased his speed on this play, and with the help of a missed tackle from TCU, he was able to land at the 2-yard line. Next play, the ball was handed off to Brooks yet again, and he scores the Longhorns' first points of the game, making the score 7-3 Texas. And with 4.5 minutes left in this first quarter, TCU's Griffin Kell makes a 56-yard field goal to make the score 7-6. At the end of the quarter, Ewers threw an interception caught by Millard Bradford, who returned the ball for 40 yards, and that was until Jordan Winnington came out of nowhere to force a fumble, which was recovered by Texas. Ewers then throws a 6-yard touchdown pass after this play to A.D. Mitchell, who has definitely been practicing his dance moves for this exact moment. Let's take a look back at that incredible catch made by Mitchell. The touchdown helped the Longhorns lead the game 19-6. 1 minute left before halftime, and TCU's Josh Hoover threw an interception caught by Terrence Brooks. Now, surely, with 20 seconds left in this half, there's going to be no more scoring, right? Wrong. Jonathan Brooks makes another incredible play with a 22-yard touchdown run to make the game 26-6 Texas. After this, we fast forward to the fourth quarter when TCU's Imani Bailey runs 17 yards to score for the Horned Frogs. With only 5 minutes left in this game, Hoover threw another touchdown pass to J.P. Richardson on 4th and goal. TCU trails the Longhorns 29-19. To make this game even more stressful, Hoover threw another touchdown pass, this time to Savion Williams, and TCU's only down by 3 with 3 minutes left in regulation. The Longhorns were scrambling to make sure that this would not be a repeat K-State game and are blessed with a game-saving catch on 3rd and 12 by A.D. Mitchell, making the final score in Fort Worth 29-26 Texas. Our very own Alyssa King and Debney Serta covered the game at Ammon G. Carter Stadium. Let's take a look at what they had to say.
The Texas Longhorns drove up I-35 for the second time this year on Saturday, but this time up to Ammon G. Carter Stadium, home of the TCU Horned Frogs. 104,000 fans in attendance, knowing that Texas came up short against the Frogs at home last year. As the current 7th-ranked team in the country, Texas knew losing was not an option, especially with the return of starting quarterback Quinn Ewers back from an injury. And they lived up to those expectations for the first 3 quarters. First half, Texas played like they were back in Tuscaloosa. First down after first down, deep ball completions, you name it. Texas put 26 on the board before the half, leaving the Frogs at just 6. Ewers said he felt just as comfortable as when he left, and boy did that first half show it. Second half, TCU started looking like the national runner-up again. They managed 302 total passing yards, majority of them being in that fourth quarter. Before Texas fans knew it, memories of last week's overtime game against Kansas State came to mind. Another blown lead. The power of TCU's Hypnotoad couldn't rattle the horns when it came down to a crucial 3rd and 12 with 2 minutes left in the game. Ewers with the snap, looked downfield to A.D. Mitchell, 35 yards away to close it out. Boom, caught it. First down Texas, game over. Texas escaped with a 29-26 win over the Frogs and will not have to face them anytime soon with the move to the SEC come fall 2024. Texas now moves to 9-1 and has a Big 12 Conference title on their minds. With TSTV Sports, I'm Alyssa King.
Back with us is our football analyst, Grabiel Silva, to go into depth about the Longhorns' win. Thank you for joining us, Grabiel.
Happy to be here.
After the overtime win at DKR against Kansas State, what do you think were the keys to win at TCU for the Longhorns on Saturday?
Well, to start off, the offense was firing on all cylinders this past weekend. Saturday's game marked the return of quarterback Quinn Ewers. After missing the last two contests, you could tell he was a touch off in the beginning of the game, and it was evident in the one underthrown interception that he had thrown. Once he settled in, however, Ewers looked like his old self again. He completed 22 passes on 33 attempts and threw for 317 yards and 1 touchdown. However, with the uncertainty of how Ewers would look coming off the injury, it seemed that Coach Steve Sarkisian was adamant in giving Jonathan Brooks the football. He finished with 21 carries and 104 yards, and he also broke free for a screen pass that went for 73 yards, that I believe was the longest reception by a Texas running back in quite some time. Brooks was spectacular in the contest until he was sidelined with an injury that we now know to be a torn ACL. But I couldn't talk about keys for the win without mentioning Xavier Worthy. He was truly the X factor on Saturday's game, finishing with 10 catches and a whopping 137 receiving yards. Almost every play he was torching defenders, and it seemed that getting the ball in his hands was a top priority for the Longhorns. The defense did its part yet again, forcing 2 turnovers and holding the TCU offense to 6 total points in the first 3 quarters. With the offense hitting its stride and the Boom Squad defense being as stout as ever, it helped boost the Longhorns to yet another huge lead heading into the fourth quarter.
So you're saying that the Longhorns held TCU to only 6 points for 75% of that game on Saturday, yet the final was 29-26. How did Texas allow this huge lead to suddenly evaporate?
Well, just like Jimbo Fisher's tenure at Texas A&M, they couldn't finish out strong. It felt like rewatching the Kansas State game all over again. The Longhorns were up by a whopping 20 points heading into the fourth quarter, like you said, and it seemed like they were heading into Fort Worth and were going to easily take care of business against a sub-500 team like they're supposed to throughout the first 3 quarters. But if you've watched Texas Longhorn football for as long as I have, you know that they just cannot make things easy. Just like the games against Kansas State and Houston, the opponents scored quickly to put themselves within reach. In the fourth quarter alone, TCU scored 20 points and had all the momentum on their side. For Texas, the offense started stalling again in the middle of the second half. Against Kansas State, you could chalk it up to the inexperience of Malik Murphy, but there was no excuse for what was happening Saturday night with Quinn Ewers at the helm. It felt like Coach Steve Sarkisian took his foot a little bit off the gas, and it slowly allowed TCU back into the game. Again, I noticed in both games that the defense was absolutely dominant in the beginning, but quick stints by the offense had the defense on the field for much longer than usual. They were worn down, and it showed once TCU was starting to score at will. Luckily for Texas, Quinn Ewers and Adonai Mitchell stepped up and connected on a 35-yard pass to seal the deal, and the Longhorns escaped yet again with another close win.
Luck does seem to be a major factor in some of their most recent games, and if there's one thing that Texas football does consistently, it is keeping me at the edge of my seat every Saturday. So looking forward to this upcoming week, what does Texas need to do to win in another trap game environment like Ames?
If you thought that a night game in Fort Worth was intense, the atmosphere in Ames, Iowa will just be as terrifying for any Texas fan to think about, especially with the way the team has been falling flat at the end of games recently. As I mentioned earlier, the Longhorns won't be able to rely on running back Jonathan Brooks because he went down with an injury. So what does that mean? It means that that Texas will have to rely on a platoon of other backs. C.J. Baxter, Keelan Robinson, and Jaden Blue will all have to potentially step up and provide some help in the running game. As a result of the injury to Jonathan Brooks, you can be led to believe that the Longhorns will rely on the arm of Quinn Ewers even more. He shook off the rust in the TCU game, and he should be ready to perform at a high level in Ames. Be on the lookout for Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell to have the ball in their hands much more often. I wouldn't be surprised if they use the majority of their other weapons, such as Jatavion Sanders and Jordan Whittington, much more to compensate for the lack of running game. The passing game will be a key against Iowa State, but as we all know, nothing's ever easy when it comes to the Texas Longhorns football team. Fans will be talking about ugly wins and the CFP, but all the Longhorns can do for the rest of the season is win. For the first time in years, Texas is 9-1 and in national title contention. But getting to the Big 12 championship was the goal for the season that they could control. And the Longhorns find themselves just 3 wins away from reaching their goal to be conference champions.
Well, we wish them the best as always. Thanks for that, Grabiel. When we return, Aram Vela will preview the men's college basketball season. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back to College Press Box. The men's college basketball season tipped off last Monday, with the Longhorns starting the season ranked 19th with a 2-0 record. Joining us now is Aram Vela to talk a little bit more about the new season. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Always happy to be on the show.
So last year, the Texas Longhorns posted an exceptional 29-9 record and even advanced to the Elite Eight with interim coach Rodney Terry. This season, the Longhorns lost a lot of veterans and experience, but also gained some talented freshmen and transfers. Now that the dust has settled and a new year of college hoops is here, what can we expect this season from Rodney Terry and his team?
You know, as we all know, the Texas Longhorns had a very successful 2022-2023 campaign, but it ended in a heartbreaker to Miami in the Elite Eight. And expectations are a little bit lower this year as compared to last, as the Longhorns lost some key senior leaders like Timmy Allen, Serge Rice, and Marcus Carr. Ron Holland, the projected #1 overall pick in the 2024 NBA draft, also decommitted from Texas over the summer in favor of the NBA G League. The Horns lost a lot of talent and leadership, but they also reloaded in the transfer portal this season. Coach Rodney Terry managed to pick up Max Absmus, Caden Shedrick, Chendall Weaver, and Ithiel Horton, and UTEP transfer Zarek Onyema in the transfer portal this offseason. These guys, plus Tyrese Hunter, Dylan Mitchell, and Brock Cunningham, will make up the regular rotation for the Horns this season. Throughout 2 games this season, the Longhorns' leading scorers are Ithiel Horton at 17 points per game and Max Absmus at 15 points per game. The trio of Horton, Absmus, and Tyrese Hunter will make for a legitimate backcourt on both ends of the ball. Looking at the front court, I expect the rim protection to be very good, as UTEP transfer Zarek Onyema and Virginia transfer Caden Shedrick will hold it down in the paint. Old man Brock is going to do his thing. He reminds me of P.J. Tucker because of his grit and hustle on every play. Dylan Mitchell is a guy I'm looking at. He's going to be a breakout star this season, in my opinion. He's just too good of an athlete not to. He's shown better basketball IQ in 2 games this season, and he's also an exceptional rim runner. He's going to be better at defending because of his overall length, and he will be better offensively this year than he was last. The biggest question mark for me is the status of Dylan Dessou. He caught fire last year in March before getting hurt. A healthy, productive Dylan Dessou could make all the difference this year between an early exit or a Final Four run in this year's tournament. So Texas fans, at the end of the day, I would be optimistic about this year's team, but cautiously. They're nowhere near as good as last year's team, but still, I would expect them to be a top 4 or 5 seed in the tournament and maybe a run to the Sweet 16.
I do hope that we see a healthy Dylan Dessou sometime soon, but for now I'll keep my hopes up and keep my horns even higher. Looking at the bigger picture here, who do you think is a candidate for the National Player of the Year?
Okay, so if we look at the National Player of the Year award, it's been dominated by big men these past couple years. Zach Edey won it last year, Oscar Tshiebwe won it in 2022, and Luka Garza won it in 2021. This year, I believe it will go to a big man, but a different big man. Of course, I'm talking about sophomore big man Kyle Filipowski from Duke. But there's something different about him, though. If you look at the past winners such as Zach Edey, Luka Garza, and Oscar Tshiebwe, they all have one thing in common. Their games are not going to translate to the NBA very well. I mean, Zach Edey is a couple months removed from being the tallest fry cook in America. And it's easy to hide that in college. You know, height will cover up what you lack in pure skill. Obviously, you've seen that with the past winners. But the NBA is a different story where everyone is talented and big. Now, I don't see Kyle Filipowski having this issue because he actually has both talent and size. I mean, he was a first-round draft pick in last year's draft before he decided to return for his sophomore season. He's the classic Duke white boy everybody loves to hate and almost feels like he's a reincarnation of Christian Laettner. He's got NBA size at 7 foot, 230 pounds, and he's also extremely nimble and quick for his size. He can run the floor. He looks like a guard sometimes, to be honest. He's also a good floor stretcher for his size and position. Eventually, more and more of those threes are going to start falling for him, and he hasn't shown it this season yet, but he can create for himself and others. He's got good handles and good vision for a 7-footer. Defensively, he was overshadowed by Derek Lively II last year, but he's a surprisingly good rim protector and interior presence. Now, obviously, his bread and butter is going to be in the paint. He's got immaculate footwork and seems to thrive better when there's contact on his shots. He's a truly dominant interior force because of his size combined with his skill, and so far he's averaging 25 points and 7 rebounds per game in 2 games against Dartmouth and number 3 Arizona. And I think if he keeps at this pace, he'll be the first Blue Devil to win the National Player of the Year since Zion Williams did it back in 2019 before he was lazy and unmotivated.
Now, I know that this is way too early to ask this, but I can't help but look toward March when college basketball starts to ramp up. It seems that every top team is absolutely loaded with talent this season, but as we all know, only one team can come out on top come April. Who is your pick to win the 2024 NCAA National Championship in Glendale, Arizona?
Before I answer this question, I'm just going to say there's no bias in any way. I'm going to stay in Durham with this. Duke is the best player. Duke has the best player, and they're the best team in the nation, in my opinion. And I think they're going to win the national championship this year. But before I go into further detail, let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. I know that they lost to Arizona, but I'm just going to pretend like that didn't happen because I had this idea before they lost. I mean, I think Arizona's most notable alumni is Kourtney Kardashian. That says a lot about your program school if that is your most notable alumni. But this team, it just feels different. And the run to the ACC title last year in Coach Shire's first year as the head coach of the Blue Devils proves this to me. Let's be honest, a game that happens in November has no impact in March. We saw the same thing with last year's Duke squad. Last year's Duke team was young and talented, but this year mixes experience with talent. Listen, it seems like it's the same cycle every year with this Duke team. Talented young freshmen, 5 stars, high expectations. They start off slow, begin to pick up the pace in the middle of the season, win the ACC, and make a run in the tournament just to lose to a more experienced team. Everyone knows that their freshmen most likely leave for the draft, but this time it didn't happen. Duke returned all but one starter from last year's team that lost to Tennessee in the round of 32. 1 year of college basketball was crucial for those freshmen that chose to stay, Tyrese Proctor, Mark Mitchell, and Kyle Filipowski, and I do expect senior leader Jeremy Roach to be the voice of reason in the locker room and on the floor. Duke also has its usual wave of talented freshmen in Jared McCain, Caleb Foster, Sean Stewart, and TJ Power. TikTok legend Jared McCain has already proven to be a legit college basketball player. He looks like a valid starter so far through 2 games. Caleb Foster is an explosive athlete who can provide a scoring spark off the bench. And this isn't even mentioning bench players that won't really see that much time, such as Sean Stewart, TJ Power, and Jaden Choate, who would be rotational players anywhere else, might I add. I do view this roster as a dangerous blend of talent and experience. But at the end of the day, it's up to Coach Shire to put it all together and find the right rotations. If he can do that, I don't see any team competing with the talent that Duke has come March, and it would not be unrealistic to say that Duke will win their first NCAA championship since 2015.
Well, those do seem very unbiased, but personally, I hope that the Longhorns give Duke a run for their money this year, but we'll have to wait to see how the season plays out. Thank you for joining us, Aram. When we return, Campbell Choate will preview the women's basketball season. Stay with us. We'll be back after this. Welcome back to College Press Box. Campbell Choate is here with us now to talk some women's basketball. Welcome on, Campbell.
Thanks for having me.
Let's jump right into it. Last year, the women's team made it to the second round of the NCAA tournament. Do you think that this team will surpass last year's in their postseason appearances, or do you think that they'll have a similar fate?
Well, it's hard to determine the rest of the season based off of just 3 games, but from what I've seen so far, I think that this team is going to have more success in the postseason compared to last year's team. Head coach Vic Schaefer said he's made it clear from the jump that he expects nothing but the best from his players, and I think this tenacious mindset will bring them more success. In their exhibition game, Texas won 124-52. While most coaches would see this as a major success, Schaefer says that he was unhappy with the 18 turnovers offense committed. This type of attention to detail and always striving for the best will hopefully implement cleaner play on the court. When it comes to this season's roster, this looks like a stacked, cohesive group. I think that the mix of veterans as well as some new faces will only add to this team's offensive aggression, and I think that we'll see even faster basketball being played. Junior Rory Harmon brings this season after being named the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, and her ability to set up plays and read the ball coming off from opposing teams will be one of the most integral parts of winning. Shea Hawley has also played in every single game last season, and her endurance will be another big win for the Longhorns, as well as her overall knowledge of what it's like to play in this conference. Taylor Jones is another returner, and she put up 19 points against Southern University last week. Jones averaged almost 10 points a game, and this consistency from Jones and other players is going to be something to watch and to decipher whether or not this team will go far in the NCAA tournament. Jones also recorded 62 block shots last season, and this last-second type of defense is going to be something to look at when it comes to point differentials. As for new faces, Madison Booker was ranked number 12 in her recruiting class. Booker averaged almost 17 points a game in high school, and while there is going to be an adjustment period for her, I feel we'll see more high-scoring games in her future. Overall, I think that this team has a good chance of going further in the postseason. Putting roster and schedule aside, the most telling evidence of success will be based on how well this team communicates and meshes on the court.
Communication is always the heart of a successful team, and I think that this is a great time for Rory, Shea, and Taylor to show the SEC what they can expect from us next year. What games on the schedule do you think will prove whether or not Texas will go far in the postseason, and what are they going to need to do to win?
Yeah, the most competitive game that I see coming up is going to be the UConn game. This game will be on December 3rd, and it'll be at home, so hopefully Longhorn Nation shows up and supports. Last year, Texas lost 83-76. I think this game will be very telling on whether or not Texas truly has improved from last season, or if same mistakes will be made. Alyssa Moore had an impressive performance in last year's game, but with Moore out on injury, someone else is going to need to step up. Texas did a great job of putting up a lot of points late in the game last year, with 16-6 points scored in less than 5 minutes of the game. I think that if Texas gets on UConn early in the game and then keeps the same momentum throughout its entirety, they have a better chance of winning. I also see both Baylor conference games being highly competitive this season. This will be the last time the two teams play each other in the Big 12, and Baylor is ranked 19th in comparison to Texas 13th. Prior to last year, Baylor won 12 consecutive Big 12 titles. These conference games are going to be pivotal when it comes to deciding whether or not Texas will be in the Big 12 championship conference and how they'll do that. But I'll get more into that in just a second. Other than that, I think the remaining games on the schedule give Texas the opportunity to run through some more teams and put up as many points as possible to help their ranking. Not a lot of other games stick out to me as highly competitive, but you never know who will show up for conference play.
So, what are your predictions for the Big 12 championship and even further?
I can confidently say that the Big 12 championship should be between Texas and Baylor if all goes to plan. No other teams in the Big 12 have the talent or coaching staff that Baylor and Texas have, and this should make for a fun last Big 12 appearance for Texas. Like I said, Texas is currently ranked higher than Baylor, but we all know this is a premature way to gauge whether or not Texas is truly better than them. I think that if Alyssa Moore is back, Texas is scoring consistently throughout conference games and is forcing as many turnovers as they've been able to in the preseason, Texas has a good shot at winning. As for the NCAA tournament, this will depend on who we are stacked up against early in the tournament. Do I think that this team has the ability to beat LSU? Probably not. But I think that this team does have a good shot at beating teams like USC, Colorado, and Florida State, who are current top 25 teams. I can see Texas putting up a good game against Tennessee and UNC. So I feel like if they're at the top of their game, there's a good shot that they can make it to the Elite Eight.
As always, thank you, Campbell, for joining us. When we return, we take a look at the past week in Longhorn sports. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this. Let's look at some noteworthy news stories from sports this past week. Number 3, Texas volleyball swept Cincinnati last Saturday at Gregory Gymnasium. They kept Cincinnati under 14 points every set and clinched their 7th consecutive Big 12 championship spot. Texas had 12 total blocks and 6 aces while reaching a season-high hitting percentage of .476. I cannot wait to see how the rest of the season pans out for this team. Recruiting class Texas women's basketball is one of the 2 programs in the country that have signed 3 top 50 ranked recruits this year. The class is the 3rd top 10 class for Coach Vic Schaefer in his 4 years at Texas. So far, the class includes Justice Carlton from Katy, Texas, Jordan Lee from Stockton, California, and Brianna Preston from Jonesboro, Georgia. These players are ranked numbers 7, 8, and 43 nationally, and we cannot wait to see what they bring to Texas. And Texas men's cross country won its 5th NCAA South Central Regional title on Friday at Agri Park, scoring 33 points. Senior Devin Hart finished 3rd in the 10K, while Roger Rivera finished 4th and Isaac Alonso finished 5th. After placing among the top 25, 6 Longhorns from the team were named to the All-Region team. By winning this meet, Texas has secured its spot at the NCAA championship for the 15th straight season. Best of luck to them. And looking ahead, we have some exciting events this week, including women's basketball against UT Arlington at Moody Center on Tuesday at 7, volleyball versus Iowa State at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, and also on Wednesday, men's basketball versus Rice at 8 p.m. at the Moody Center, volleyball at UCF this Saturday at 1 p.m. in Orlando, and Texas football ends this week at Iowa State this Saturday with a 7 p.m. kickoff. Good luck to all of our Longhorns this week. And that'll do it for this week's episode of College Press Box. Thank you to everybody for tuning in, and thank you to everyone in our back room, including our executive producer, Jason Conander. Don't forget to tune in to our other shows this week, like College Crossfire on Wednesday at 9 and 1-0 Sports on Friday at 10. That's it for me. I'm Chloe Porras for TSTV Sports. Have a great night.